The desire to regulate and control everything, even the personal lives of soldiers, was one of the priorities of Nazi Germany's policy. After all, this is the only way to achieve the so-called racial hygiene and demographic growth of true Aryans. If it was easier with men and their purity was checked for admission to the German Workers' Party or the SS, then a special school of brides was organized for women. Only those who graduated from it could become wives of the German elite. Despite the fact that such a school was a very strange place, there were many who wanted to get there, because the graduation certificate guaranteed a successful and wealthy husband and a comfortable life as a wife and mother. However, in addition to pure blood, external requirements were also imposed on girls wishing to receive such a certificate. Everything was done to ensure that the only true goal was present in a woman's life: her husband, family, and children. The decree, which referred to the creation of a special training course for girls wishing to become wives of the Nazis, was signed back in 1936. A year later, the first school was already opened. The SS Reichsfuhrer also approved the program according to which the brides were engaged. The number of schools increased day by day. By the end of the war, there were already 32. All bride schools were subordinated to the National Socialist Organization of German Women and personally headed by Gertrude Scholz-Klink. The organization, which was led by an imposing lady with hair, was very popular. In 1943, it consisted of more than 7 million German women. Around the same time, the duration of training at the bride school reached 2 months. The training was not free. For 1.5 to 2 months of training, the girls' parents had to pay 135 Reichsmarks. Of course, the main requirement was Aryan origin, although very rarely they could make an exception and admit to school and even issue a certificate to girls who also had Jewish blood, but such cases were extremely rare. The purity of the blood had to be expressed in external qualities. The Aryan bride had to be tall, blonde, with blue or green eyes and white skin. At the same time, have excellent physical and mental health. The latter was given a huge role, so if one of the parents had mental illnesses, then she had no right to study at such a school. However, it was difficult to call these courses a school in the conventional sense of the word, because there was no question of any fundamental training. It is not surprising, the last unzipped documents of the Nazis also show that Nazism was saturated not only with anti-Semitism, anti-communism, but also with anti-feminism. The bride schools and the requirements that were imposed on life partners are an attempt to protect them from knowledge and limit their horizons, forcing them to exist in an exclusively domestic space and see their purpose in serving their spouse. The principle of children, church, kitchen became the basis of the curriculum of such schools. Moreover, this ideological principle was introduced even before Hitler, and the image of a woman mother was seen by the Germans in this format. In 1917, there was a school of mothers in Germany, in which similar principles of devotion were preached, not only to the family and the church, but also to the state. So, the program included lessons in needlework, home economics, rhetoric, as well as agriculture, secular manners, and parenting. There was physical culture every day, because the state needs healthy Aryans. The maximum that the girls could count on was a small excursion into history, the principle of the formation of the state and religion. It is much more useful for the future wives of the Nazis to be able to embroider, carefully clean the house, and be able to behave properly in society. It was Hitler who introduced the practice of allocating land plots to families for gardens and vegetable gardens, which is why agricultural work was considered an excellent occupation for respectable women mothers. If a girl, after receiving a certificate, married a true Aryan, then they were provided with an interest-free loan, from which a quarter was deducted for the birth of each child. The state encouraged large families in every possible way and helped to ensure that families had a large number of children. There were benefits for medicine, schools, a monthly allowance for each child. The authority of women mothers has grown significantly in society. It was believed that the more healthy children a woman gave birth to, the more she took place in life. Those who gave birth to 8 or more children were awarded the Golden Cross and received a very impressive monthly allowance. It is worth noting that this approach has borne fruit. Germany has increased the birth rate by 1.5 times in 5 years. In order for women to give birth tirelessly, they were forbidden to study at universities and work. When women were dismissed, they even had to be encouraged. However, compulsory labor service was introduced for young girls. If a girl is not married and has not reached the age of 25, then she should benefit her country even with unskilled labor. In the so-called labor camps, they worked 20 hours a week, wore a special uniform and a swastika armband. Girls from this category could be sent to work as a nanny or au pair in large families. Positions in the service sector were considered to be typically female. German women were not forced to resign from such posts. On the contrary, they were strongly encouraged to work in such an area. Any attempt by a woman to take place in a career was perceived by the fascists as something abnormal, contrary to nature, because true female happiness can only be at home next to her husband. By the way, in Germany, already in 1921, a decree was signed that women should not be allowed to high government posts. In the 30s, the dismissal of women from positions was in full swing. It even came to doctors. This specialty was recognized as too responsible to entrust it to a woman. Judges, lawyers, and teachers were fired. In 2 years, the number of female students in universities has decreased by 30,000, and the majority of female deputies fled the country, were under house arrest or were sent to a concentration camp. The situation of women in the country has deteriorated dramatically. Even their wages were a third lower than men's. So, a highly qualified female specialist received about the same amount as a man of a working specialty. However, for most German women, this did not pose any particular problems. They willingly married and worked wherever possible. At the very beginning of his political career, Hitler declared that he did not represent women in politics in any positions, since 99% of political issues were not their business. In the society that the Führer built, the role of a woman was only in motherhood, and she began to represent value only after she became a mother. Not only the Führer's personality itself was cultivated, but also his postulates. The birth of a child is a personal gift to the Führer. This idea was actively promoted, turning marriage not into an end in itself, but only a step in the growth of demography. Relationships between men and women were deprived of all romance, giving way to physiology and high purpose. It is not known how this practice would have ended for German women, which by the time the war began had only begun to gain momentum. One thing is clear, that for Hitler, the lives of both those whose territories he sought to conquer and his Aryan citizens, in whom he saw only a mechanism for implementing his ambitious plans, had no special value. The lack of education and career opportunities put women all over the country in a dependent position, while their men, even while at war, did not deny themselves love affairs, for example in the occupied territories. Subscribe to my channel and like it if you are interested in this video.